Hello, this is David Lee from Valor. Welcome to today's web conference hosted by Valor and the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence on Prevention Strategies and Approaches, a practical primer on prevention for California sexual violence and prevention practitioners. We're glad to have you joining us today. We are hosting this web conference to provide background information to help support those who are considering applying to the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services SD grant, and you'll hear more about that, and giving background information about the prevention strategies and approaches that are in that RFP. So I'd like to introduce the presenters that we're going to be having today. I am really glad to be joined by my colleagues and Krista Colon, who is with the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. Hi, Krista. I saw the wave.
Hi, David. Hi, everybody.
Thank you. I'm also joined by Valor's Ashley Klein Jimenez. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
Wonderful. And also joined by Miranda Stiers from the partnership. Hi, Miranda.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Great, thank you. I'm really glad that we're able to pull this together to get this team to be able to present. As I said, by the end of this session, participants will be able to describe the prevention strategies and approaches identified in the Cal OES 2021 SD request for proposals. I use the acronym RFP, but I try to not put those always in there. And so we'll be able to talk about that. And we also want to be able to identify resources available on potential programs to implement these prevention strategies and approaches. So that is what we are trying to be able to do. So what I want to do is hand the podium over to Krista, who's going to give a little background about how we got to why we're doing today's web conference. So Krista, over to you.
Thanks so much, David. And thank you all for being here today. So just to start with a little bit of grounding as to how this request for proposal and funding opportunity came to be. I think many of you know that the partnership and Valor have teamed up for several years now to work on dedicated budget advocacy in the state budget to try to secure stable, ongoing dollars to help support your prevention work. And so that is a work in progress, as always, but in the budget that became law over the summer of 2021, the state provided $15 million for sexual and domestic violence in that budget, which is the largest dollar amount we've seen them allocate at one time to prevention. Unfortunately, and I just want to name this, it is one-time funding, so it's not guaranteed after this grant cycle. Now, as we'll talk about, the request for proposal is for a 2-year grant, right? Because there are enough dollars here, Cal OES is able to fund programs for 2 years. But we continue to work really hard every year in the budget to get these dollars to be included, and really are working hard to try to get to a place where they're just included as ongoing money. For those of you who, receive domestic violence shelter grant awards, right? There are ongoing dollars in the state budget to support that. It's not something we have to fight for in the same way on an annual basis. And we really want to get there with prevention too. We know it needs more than just one-time investment. And we keep trying to convince the budget committee and the governor about the need for ongoing permanent funding. So this year, continues to build on several years of success. We've been successful every time we've asked for this money, notwithstanding 2020, which was the terrible, horrible, no good first COVID budget that we had to deal with, right as the state was really grappling with the start of this pandemic that we're, of course, all still dealing with. So we're hoping to continue that success. We'll talk more about budget advocacy on other webinars in other formats with you all, but just wanted to sort of ground that that's where these dollars are coming from. Is directly from the work of our organizations, really aided and supported by all of you in the field who have taken action over these years. Okay, so with that said, let's start to talk a little bit about the actual request for proposal. I'm going to just go over some of the basics here and then really turn it over to the rest of the team to get through all of the expertise and information that's more specific. So all of the information you see on your screen is really pulled directly from the proposal. There's nothing new here, right? These are all the same words. If you all have looked at the request for proposal, you've already seen. Just real important pieces to note. Eligibility is that applicants must be a nonprofit organization. As I said, it's a 2-year award period. So awards will be from May 1st of 2022 all the way through April 30th of 2024. And you can request in your application up to $300,000. The deadline to apply is Wednesday, February 9th. So you've got a little bit over a month to work on those applications. And one of my main suggestions that I just want to make is start early. I think the year always gets off to a bit of a hectic start for many of us. Whether it's yourself or your finance team or your admin folks at your organization, many folks in your organization are also going to be spending January in grant reporting world. So they're going to be focused on all the reports that are due for all the grants that you already received, in addition to trying to work on this. So for the sake of your grants people, please do not go to finance the day before this is due and ask for information. Get started on this early, right? A lot of it might need some brainstorming, developing ideas of substantively what you want to do. But there's a lot you can start on from the very beginning. A simple reminder, but an important one. Remember to read the rules closely. All of the government RFPs always come with rules about page limits, fonts, spacing, single space, double space, 12-point font, right? Whatever it is. And so just be certain to read it, even though it might seem like kind of small potatoes details, that stuff can really matter. They do actually pay attention to that. I want to note on the RFP, the very last page in that PDF is actually a helpful checklist of everything you need to include. Don't forget to look at it, right? Before you send off your proposal, it's a good thing to just double check it. Even if you've done 100 of these proposals at this point, right? And you're very familiar with the Cal OES format, it's always helpful to just double check. As I said, get your finance person involved early. I tend to find for myself personally, when I'm working on a new grant proposal for a new project, that budgets can be a piece that take a fair amount of time to figure out, right? You're trying to figure out how many staff, how much time, what activities you're going to do, and what those are going to cost. I know that with COVID, we're all figuring out, are we doing things virtually, in person? What are the different costs that implies? So get started on your budget as soon as you can. I also very personally like to kind of check off the paperwork stuff as much as possible. So the certification, the administrative forms, the ones that are more routine and common to the grants, I like to get those done early if I can, just so that they're done, right? So that I'm not thinking about them. Also because I have to track down other people for signatures on that. And so being mindful of who I need to sign what, when they're actually going to be around, how much access I have to get them to sign. So whatever you can do early is sometimes helpful, so you're not stressed about it at the last minute. And then one other piece I'll just name here, excuse me, is that Cal OES includes in the RFP the rating sheet that they will use when they read and review your application. So use it, right? Use it as a tool. It's a helpful way to check for yourself and make sure you've addressed each item. And if you have been staring at the draft of your proposal for days and days and have it memorized, maybe get one of your colleagues to look at it and say, use this scoring sheet, read this proposal. Is everything in there? Is there anything you don't feel like I talked about? Right? Have that second set of eyes can sometimes be really helpful, because by the time you've spent a month working on a proposal, you'll know it inside and out, but someone who hasn't may not.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to transition to a question from the audience.
Go for it. I was just about to say, I can see questions coming in, but haven't had a chance to see yet what they are.
So I want to thank you and just note that we are not Cal OES. And so we're going to be talking mainly in this webcom. We wanted to give some of the context, but we cannot answer all of the questions about the RFP. We are just sharing with you. So the question that Virginia is asking is, can you have subcontracts with government or public organizations, or does the money have to be going, or does all the money have to be going to nonprofits? And all that we're sharing is that what Cal OES had written is that the grantee must be a nonprofit organization. And so we can't answer the questions on what they will permit or not permit. We only can share with what is in the RFP. So I know I'm a little bit sidestepping the question, but so you can be able to try to look at that and see if and notice if there's any restrictions on who subcontractors can be in there. I don't remember seeing that, but you need to be able to review that there. And so, but we wanted to give some of that context of being able to understand what this is doing here. What we're going to try to do here is maybe let's move to the next slide. And talk about the Krista, you just want to talk about briefly about some of these different elements, and then we'll transition for the rest of the call.
Absolutely. And just want to name that there's a list of items that grantees must do, which we're going to get into with the rest of the call around areas of focus, communities to prioritize, the prevention strategies. So just make note of these, and again, make sure that these are all pieces that you address.
And in there, I'm going to go back one piece, just 1 second. I just want to note that what we're going to be, it says select one or more evidence-based prevention strategy or strategies and approaches from the prevention strategy and approach list. So what we're going to mainly do today is talk about that strategy list. Great. Why don't we go move to the next slide, which I think could be me. And I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Ashley.
Thanks, David. All right, so let's talk about the purpose of this program, which is prevention. And let me move my slides ahead. I have a bit of a lag, sorry about that. Back one, gosh. All right, so prevention activities are typically categorized into 3 definitions, including primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. And you can find the definitions for primary and secondary prevention. They're on this slide. They're also on page 4 of this RFP. But really the intent of this program is to focus on activities that can be implemented before violence ever happens. And so we're really focusing on approaches that take place before violence ever happens and not on the immediate aftermaths of violence. And so the goal is not to be doing emergency services, but the point is to do things that will prevent the need for emergency services. So what we'll go through in a moment is not, there are strategies and approaches that aren't about providing services to survivors, but they're really about preventing violence. So there's actually a decrease in the need for services for survivors. And so I just wanted to make that point. And one way that I wanted to kind of illustrate this a little bit more, and this is something that many of you are probably very familiar with, but I wanted to share with you the old public health story that we often use to talk about the way we should be thinking about preventing sexual and domestic violence. And so it's often referred to as the moving upstream story. And as I said, it's probably very familiar to many of you, but the story goes like this. So one day there's a person fishing by the river and they see someone being swept downstream, and the person fishing jumps in to save the drowning person. And they're able to successfully save them and drag them back to the bank of the river. But not even minutes later, another person comes floating down the river, also drowning and calling out for help. And the fisher, has to save this person too. But before they even have a chance to dry off, catch their breath, here comes another person, and then another, and then 3 more people, and so on and on. And the fisher is now just exhausted, out of breath, can't possibly go on like this. And so they decide, you know what, I'm going to run upstream, and I'm going to see why all of these people are falling into the river in the first place. And when the fisher finally makes their way upstream, they notice that it's really kind of a disaster. There's a bridge that's very unsafe. It's falling apart. People are falling through. People are being pushed off the bridge. And so the fisher sees that it's not just one issue, there's many. And they think to themselves, if the only way I can really save people from drowning in the river is to address these issues that are going on upstream at this bridge to prevent people from falling in the first place. So when I was first learning about prevention, that story really helped me understand that while, it's so incredibly important to save drowning people, it's not sustainable. And we can't just only be pulling people out of the water. So in sexual and domestic violence prevention, we talk a lot about the different forms that prevention can take. And we can provide advocacy to survivors. We can raise awareness about sexual and domestic violence and give information about the resources that are available. We can implement ways for people to reduce their risk of experiencing violence. And we can also try to get ahead of it and stop it from happening in the first place. And so in that moving upstream story, we can think about advocacy would be the fisher being willing to go into the water and save the drowning people. We can think of outreach and awareness as posting signs to let people know that there's a broken bridge. Risk reduction might be teaching people how to swim or providing them with flotation devices. But primary prevention would be actually fixing the bridge. Fixing the bridge would really have the biggest impact. It would prevent people from falling in the first place and would prevent all of that other work. And so the strategies that we're going to be sharing with you all today and that are options in the RFP are really focused on fixing the bridge or preventing violence from happening in the first place. And with that, we would love to hear from you all and just to get a sense of what types of prevention activities are you doing right now, currently? And so a lot of you have already been using the text chat, so you'd head over there and just let us know what type of prevention activity does your organization do in the communities that you're located in. We'd love to just get a sense of what is already happening out there. Go
ahead and
David.
Please write in the chat, what prevention activities is your organization involved in and you're doing? So we'd love just to get a sense of you. I know I recognize many of you, so know that many of you have been involved in prevention for a long time. And so we already got someone who's going to fix the bridge, youth conferences and presentations in schools, training healthcare providers on how to talk with patients about safe and healthy relationships, child abuse, sexual abuse prevention, rape prevention education in the schools, policy and procedures change, child abuse prevention workshops in the community, youth groups that teach them about healthy relationships, bystander programs with athletes, child sexual abuse prevention through research and stigma-free support, LGBTQ plus IPV or intimate partner violence prevention, college organizations with student leaders doing work at colleges. People are just writing in a lot of stuff I see with youth, a lot of stuff with schools. I see some faith work, some financial literacy, some healthy relationships work, doing shifty boundaries, which we'll be talking about later, and teen dating violence. Great, well, thank you. It's wonderful seeing the list of work that you're doing. Girls empowerment, Great. We'll be actually talking about that also. So there's a piece here working with youth through schools, advocacy for child tax credits, childcare, et cetera, to improve economic security. So wonderful anti-racism work and anti-violence work. Thank you so much for going on and sharing us a lot of the work that you're doing. So I want to talk about the evidence-based prevention strategies and approaches as are defined in this RFP, evidence-informed prevention strategies and approaches as it was defined in this RFP. So in this RFP, this is verbatim on page 4 of the RFP, that they are going to use the strategies and approaches from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and they define the strategy as the preventative direction of actions to achieve the goal of preventing sexual and domestic violence, and the approach is the specific ways to advance the strategy. This can be accomplished through programs, policies, and practices. And in this RFP, Cal OES has drawn upon 2 documents from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention called technical packages. One of them on sexual violence called Stop SV, a technical package to prevent sexual violence, and also the Preventing Intimate Partner Violence Across the Lifespan. And you'll notice that Ashley just posted the hyperlinks to these reports. These are reports that all of us presenting here are very familiar with. I know Ashley and I got to be actually external reviewers on these reports with the CDC. And so we're going to be sharing from based on the information that as they are defining it for what's for the purposes of this RFP. And so I do encourage those. If you want more information about those reports, Valor's National Project Prevent Connect did web conferences with the authors of the reports, and you can get more detailed information about these strategies and approaches in there. And Ashley also just put the links in, though I think we're missing the hyperlink links on what she posted. So we'll have to fix that to get the hyperlinks to work. I think we took the HTTPs out, but they'll work on there. Just go to Prevent Connect's website to be able to get those. Now, this chart I'm not going to read, but this is the strategies and approaches that were explicitly named as being the list of strategies and approaches that would be able to be used for this RFP. So there'll be some strategies in those technical packages that are not included in this RFP. These are the strategies and approaches that were included. So during this web conference, we are going to be talking about the strategies that are and approaches that they have named explicitly in this RFP. And so for those proposals, being able to do that. I did see a question earlier about which strategy should you say that you're addressing domestic violence only, sexual violence only, or both, and that's just up to you to make a determination if you feel it is doing one or both or the other. And so that is just a decision that you get to make. They will be evaluating all of those together, looking at all of the presentation, all of the workshop, all of the proposals they'll be doing, but they wanted to have you just decide which one it is addressing primarily. So in this, just to also let you know that Valor and the California Partnership Domestic Violence, along with the California Department of Public Health, in the past have been technical assistance providers to SD grantees and have been provided support. We are expecting that will continue for the new SD grantees. And so what we are doing is, and I see several members of the California Department of Public Health are attending today's session. And so we want to be able to highlight that for those awarded, that they will be able to get continuing support in being able to develop and implement and evaluate their prevention strategy and approaches. And we're basing our experience as doing work in California and nationally, and both the partnership and Valor have been long-time prevention leaders doing work. And so, whether it's been, for CDC's, especially in CDC's prevention efforts, whether it's the Delta Project, as the partnership has been for gosh, probably almost 20 years now, and Valor, through its work with the California Department of Public Health and the RPE program, and also Prevent Connect. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Miranda to talk about the first one of these strategies, promoting social norms. Take it, Miranda.
Yes, thank you, David. So in this, we're going to be looking at exactly what is listed in the, excuse me, the RFP, as we're looking at promoting the social norms that protect against violence and engaging influential adults and peers. For folks who are doing prevention, you have probably already started engaging your communities and recognizing the impact that trusted adults are going to have in engaging youth in these conversations and in promoting those social norms that support healthy relationships and that can condemn unhealthy relationship behaviors, and making those changes. Sorry, I'm having a lag. One of those bystander approaches that we wanted to highlight is bringing in the bystander. This is a program which is available both. They have curricula for both college and high school students, and it utilizes a full array of learning methods, including having different lectures and having breakout rooms to be able to get that practical application of what folks are learning, as well as doing small group work and opportunities to do some role playing. They are working on that for younger folks, but it is not in implementation just yet. But for those who are working with college and high school students, this is an opportunity. One of the other approaches that folks may be familiar with that was created in 2006 by Dr. Dorothy Edwards is the Green Dot approach. It's a comprehensive approach for violence prevention that's really focused on bystander intervention and training folks across, or teaching folks across their lifespan. So there's targeted curricula that is for all the way from kindergarten on through adulthood, and working with community members to engage in the work to engage their communities and prevent the violence that's happening. There's also from Futures Without, I can't even talk right now, sorry. I do tend to speak very rapidly, so please tell me if I need to slow down. With the Futures Without Violence has created a curricula called Coaching Boys into Men. And what this curricula does is really recognizing how influential those coaches and instructors are for youth athletes. So it's working with advocates and their coaches to be able to reach out into their communities, and training coaches to be able to lead a 12-week training with their athletes in those conversations. There's these great cards that will kind of walk them through having those conversations with their youth on a variety of topics related to intimate partner violence, and noting what those social norms are that promote violence. And it's really looking at increasing those protective factors and recognizing the influence that coaches and the athletes have on their campuses. There is an ongoing learning collaborative as well to be able to work with. So as folks are implementing it, they do have ongoing support. Another one that we wanted to highlight is Live Respect. And this is so coaching healthy and respectful manhood from a call to men. And this program is designed for boys ages 10 to 18. There is a companion toolkit for college students as well. So there's a total of 9 sessions, and really looking at promoting healthy and respectful manhood and lifting up those languages and actions that can degrade women, girls, and other marginalized groups. It's also challenging those cultural norms and social norms that can promote violence, and also addressing bystander intervention and addressing homophobia and how that shows up in our communities. There's also the family-based programs which are listed, and the one that we wanted to promote is Families for Safe Dates. Folks may be familiar with Safe Dates, so this is really there's 6 booklets working with the families, so that can be parents and caregivers and their teens together to be able to look at healthy relationships, healthier communication, and more supports.
Well, thank you.
A lot of information.
Yeah, well, thank you. So Miranda, one of the things I think about the what's so important about the social norms changing. And these are all strategies that are trying to change, because so much behaviors are shaped by the norms that guide them. And those are sort of the behavior shapers. And so the bystander approaches are ones that encourage bystanders to take action to interrupt the conditions that either will contribute to domestic violence or sexual violence, or the actual violence itself, though a lot of it's trying to create those healthy norms in our community, or the ones that are engaging the men and boys around trying to come up with gender ways for really engaging men and boys to be able to play a role where they can be part of the solution and not just reproducing those problems. And so I think that those are really great strategies. And so what's important is to be able to stick to that strategy of being able to stick to those strategies that are looking at those social norms. And that's just the strategies that will affect social norms. I see Jeremy's asking, what percentage of the funding will go to organizations that have been previously funded through Cal OES, or to continue programs such as those that Miranda described? So we do not know how Cal OES is going to decide to be able to fund them. This is intended to be open to all nonprofit organizations to be able to do funding. And the goal is to be able to take those who will implement these strategies. There had been a previous round of SD grantees. There is more funding available for longer term than that before. And so, but there's so that's why we're trying to do this web conference, to prepare as many people as possible to be able to develop proposals around these strategies that are defined in the RFP, so we can see the best proposals can be able to be funded to serve these needs in California. So we don't know what percentage they will do, and they will fund those who score the highest. That's the only thing I can assure you. And that score sheets that Krista talked about earlier on pages 21 through 23 are very important, because that is how they will score the highest people that get above a certain minimum threshold. So with that, let's move to the next strategy, and I know we're throwing a lot of information at you, and the goal is to help you, if you're developing these proposals, to be able to know for you to know where to find resources on what those strategies are, so you can develop the best proposals and find the ones that best fit your organization's capacity and serve the needs of your community, which you know better than anyone else. So you want to provide the proposal. So the second strategy is teaching skills. Ashley, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, David. So the following examples are approaches that use individual skills building training to address sexual and domestic violence prevention. So I'm going to give some examples for each of these. Let's see. So the first approach in this strategy is social emotional learning, and that really works in childhood and adolescence to build and strengthen social and emotional skills like communication, problem solving, empathy, the regulation of emotions, and conflict management skills. And so one example of a social emotional learning program is Second Step. And I'll tell you a little bit about Second Step. It's a 15-week program for middle school students that's actually delivered by teachers. And the program includes content that is related to bullying, problem-solving skills, empathy, and managing emotions. And David's posted links. You can learn more about these programs. Girls on the Run is another example of a social emotional learning program. That's for girls. I think there's two programs. So there's one for 3rd through 5th grade girls and another for 6th through 8th grade girls. And this program is implemented by volunteer coaches, typically after school at either school or community sites. It's a 10-week, 20-lesson program that builds critical life skills, including things like resolving conflicts, making intentional decisions, and building confidence, character, caring, and connection to others. So those are two examples of social emotional learning. If we move forward, another approach that is often delivered in school settings focuses on building the skills needed to have healthy and safe relationships. So one example of this would be the program Safe Dates, which is a 10-session curriculum for youth that really focuses on positive communication skills, anger management, and conflict resolution. This program also has materials for parents and guardians. The fourth R is another example of a school-based program that builds skills around personal safety and injury prevention, and really looks at healthy relationship growth and sexuality. And then one more example here is Native Love, which is a culturally specific program that provides opportunities for Native youth to redefine what healthy relationships mean to them. So those are some examples for that approach. And as we move on, promoting healthy sexuality is another approach in this strategy, and really involves including youth and parents in comprehensive sex education. So programs that address sexual communication, sexual respect, and consent as part of a comprehensive sex education program would be included here. And we've included a few resources to help situate including healthy sexuality in a violence prevention strategy. And so you have access to those. And then we will move ahead to empowerment-based training. That again. And empowerment-based training, this one in particular, is providing education and skills with the goal of being able to recognize risk, acknowledge danger, and then build skills around verbal and physical strategies to reduce the risk of experiencing violence. And so this program is called Enhance, Assess, Acknowledge, Act, and it's a 12-hour program that aims to prevent victimization for college-aged women through education and skills building. You can get more information if you're interested in that. And then finally, in this approach, healthy relationship skills programs for adult couples is another approach in this strategy, and I just wanted to highlight that for you all. I think I'm going to move into our next approach, actually, which is providing opportunities to empower and support women and girls. And I'm going to highlight first a brand new report from the California Department of Public Health on this very topic, empowering girls and women. And so David's put a link to where you can download the report, Opportunities to Empower and Support Girls and Women in California. It's an environmental scan of opportunities around leadership and economic supports. Really encourage y'all to read that. I think a lot of work went into this report, and there's lots of good stuff in there. So thank you to CDPH for that. Some examples specifically about this approach. Programs that focus on building confidence, knowledge, and leadership skills in girls and young women can really lead to positive outcomes in things like education, employment, and community engagement throughout their lives. And so these programs are not just for girls and young women, but they really involve girls and young women in the planning, the development, and the implementation of the programs. And so girls are really seen as leaders within and through these programs. So one example of a program that strengthens leadership opportunities for girls is called Powerful Voices. And this program provides space for girls to develop and build their individual leadership skills. The program also has a social justice lens and really works to connect girls to their cultural identities and values. And I think the cool thing about this program is that it involves girls in many different ways. So there is a curriculum, but they also do trainings, community coalition work, and it even has an employment program aspect to it. And if you want to hear directly from Powerful Voices, there's a link to a Prevent Connect web conference where they shared about their work. A second example of a program that strengthens leadership and opportunities for girls that I'll highlight here is Athletes as Leaders. And this is a program that's designed for high school athletes who are playing on girls' sports teams. This particular program really builds girls' leadership skills and encourages them to be leaders in changing social norms and promoting a culture of safety and respect, not just on their school campus, but within their community. And it's a free 10-week session curriculum that you can access through the link. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Miranda.
Actually, before you do that, I just want to actually just go in back in there on the strategies that you highlight. And we've been throwing people a lot of programs. The key is for this RFP is that the RFP has defined what the strategies and approaches are. They do not specify which programs have to be done. We're giving examples, but there's not an approved list of programs, but these are examples of ways that they can be implemented. And as you're developing your proposals, you'll need to be talking about which programs you're planning on implementing. So we're trying to help give you some examples and choices to then make the best decisions on how to be able to, as I said, fit both the capacity of your organization and what's going to best meet the needs of your community. And so that's, I think, an important place. So perfect follow-up question. If we have our own girls empowerment curriculum, do we need to reference or use these models? So what you want to be doing is referencing the approach that's been defined in the RFP of empowering girls, and then explain how your program is embodying that strategy and approaches that are defined. So the RFP does not name any programs at all. It just talks about the strategies and approaches. I hope that was a helpful answer to your question. So, and at least I'll take the 3 exclamation points as it was helpful. So thank you so much. Great. So Miranda, let's move to let's move to the next strategy that's moving over to disrupting the developmental pathways toward partner violence.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're looking at the disrupting the developmental pathways, there's a number of strategies that are listed, and that's early childhood home visitation, preschool enrichment, family engagement, parenting skills and family relationship programs. Some of the things that I wanted to highlight, as we know, those risk factors associated with causing harm against intimate partners is evident well before adolescence. So we want to look at ways in which we can disrupt that and reduce the adverse childhood experiences that youth can experience. I'm using experience a lot today, sorry. So one of the things we wanted to lift up is the Essentials for Childhood through the California Department of Public Health, and looking at adverse childhood experiences as public health issues, raising awareness and commitment to promoting the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments with a number of resources that are truly phenomenal. There we go. There's also the parenting skills and family relationship programs, as well as mental health services that are resources that are available through the Blue Sky program through Blue Shield, which includes resources for parents, educators, as well as youth, and really addressing mental health within school and community programs, as well as providing resources for parents and educators. And I am having a really bad, sorry, my internet connection is showing as unstable, so I hope that the slide has advanced. If folks can let me know, that would be great. Also wanted to lift up one of the, there we go. Thank you for the assist with the Triple P, which is the Positive Parenting Program. This is a really comprehensive program and looking at parent and family support that's to prevent as well as treat behavioral and emotional problems in youth and so from children and teenagers. So really working with parents on 5 levels of intervention. So there's social media campaigns, there's also direct services for parents and really increasing their self-sufficiency and being able to support their children and learning those healthy skills that are so important. So it's really going to cover from birth to 16 years. Again, I know that that's a nutshell and we're throwing a lot out, but know that these are some of the opportunities that can be available under each of the headings.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Miranda. I'm going to do the next section, which is creating protective environments. I think this is a really important one that we need to see more programs being able to implement. And I hope people are going to be, we were just having this conversation yesterday. We're really hoping that people are going to submit proposals because we can do a lot of trying to change individuals and work on individual knowledge or individual skills. But what we really want to be able to do is make changes to communities and make changes to those environments that create the conditions where violence takes place and to create conditions that are going to be healthier. And so by creating protective environments is a really transform them, yes. And so what we want to do is create those pieces. And so there's some great opportunities. And so this is one that is very exciting to me. And I'm going to talk about several of those. So I'm going to move to the next slide. So in this, these are the ones that are defined within the RFP. We combined both the intimate partner violence and the sexual violence lists. I'm going to go through each of these and talk about some examples of what they are and what some of those programs can be. So the first part is about improving the safety and monitoring in schools or improve school climate and safety. And there's many different ways that people have been working this to try to address this within schools, to create safer spaces within the schools. Indeed, safety and safe schools have been part of our lexicon for many years now. One program that there's been some really great research done was developed by Nan Stein out of the Wesley Center for Women over in Massachusetts. It's called Shifting Boundaries. And I saw earlier someone saying that they're implementing Shifting Boundaries right now. It's a middle school program. And this program is done for middle school. It involves sort of 2 elements, a classroom element, which is 6 classroom presentations, and a building-wide component. And it's the building-wide component that really, we saw the evidence really showing some of the success in, though the building-wide builds upon the classroom session work. And what they do is a hotspot mapping process. And I'll show you a little bit about that shortly, where you're mapping where there's unsafe areas in the school and use that data to be able to then come up with actions to create safer school environments. There's also posters to be able to create posters throughout the school site to help set some of the norms and be able to promote the behaviors you want. There is a respecting boundaries agreements, which are sort of school-based. I'm trying to come up with the right language. I don't want to quite say restraining orders, but it's sort of school-wide agreements around how people will keep away from each other if there's histories of abuse, and being able to have ways which they call respecting boundary agreements. And then there's school protocols for identifying and responding to dating violence and sexual harassment within the school. And what it's doing is looking at ways that the school can come up with policies and procedures that will be able to help address the issues. We do have a link, which actually put in there. You can get all of this information and curriculum for free. So I do encourage you to go to that website to be able to get it. So I talk about the hotspot mapping and shifting boundaries. And so this is an example, and this is a image that we had done a web conference with the Shifting Boundaries on Prevent Connect many years ago. This is just an actual drawing of a school, and the green represents the places where someone feels safe. The yellow is where they're sort of unsure, and the red is where they feel unsafe. And so by taking this information and collecting that information, and then you can be able to take that and be able to then make some decisions about what you can do to be able to create safe pieces. shifting boundaries uses the hotspot mapping as only part of the intervention, but it's a really important piece, and that can help really shape that work. And the hotspot mapping strategy we've seen from several other types of programs that have done shifting boundaries. It's got some really strong evidence and research that's been done looking at it in middle school settings. I was involved also in an effort to try to adopt similar concepts for college campuses. And so on the left is a program that's called Enhancing Campus Sexual Assault Prevention Efforts Through Situational Interventions. This is a project that was piloted at several college campuses where we were developing different strategies to be able to do changing the environment to make it less likely to have happen. I'll give an example from that very shortly. And there's a brand new project out of Johns Hopkins called Sexual Violence Prevention Through Hotspot Mapping to create protective environments on college campuses. And have a link to that. And that's a brand new project, research project, where they're going to be doing some more funding around that. So in the first one, we once again also did some mapping. So I'm going to tell at Williams College in Massachusetts, we identified the problem of sexual harassment and unwanted touch that was taking place at school dances in social spaces. And what was happening is there's a lot of grabbing and pieces taking place there. And so what we did is we did a sort of a variation of a hotspot mapping, but we used a little more complex tool. And this was based on doing a lot of focus groups and conversations and with students and at this campus to talk about what are the different elements. And then they would mark, and there was actually a sticker book we gave them. And in the sticker book, they would identify different places where they felt comfortable or uncomfortable. And we talked about, was it the lighting? Was it the noise? Was it the temperature? Was it this, the type of space and how people felt and how you were looked at, or pieces of that. And this gave us some really useful data to think about how to make changes into that space. So one of the things we learned is that people couldn't talk to each other because the music was so loud. And so what we found was that people reported some changes when we came up with some decibel limits for the parties, and it made it so people could actually start talking to each other, and that helped. There was lighting, and there were places that were really poorly lit, and coming up with places that was better lighting or changing the ways that you can come in and out of a setting was also able to change the environment. In many of the party spaces, you would have to literally go through a gauntlet of people to get into that space, and it felt very threatening as you went in. And so we had to find ways to change the tone of the space. And so the report highlights many of the strategies that we used at college campuses. And so it's just a different way of being able to look at creating a protective environment. Another piece is about improve organizational policies and workplace climate, or establishing or consistently applying workplace policies. And we can see in the CDC report, they recommended proactive sexual harassment prevention policies and procedures, and also intimate partner violence in the workplace trainings. I would strongly encourage you to go to Workplaces Respond to Sexual and Domestic Violence National Resource Center. We have, Ashley just put the link in there. There's a whole host of programs. So workplaces can be another place where we can create the workplace environment to create safer and create the safer conditions. And what we want to do is think about ways that we can move and shift those workplace settings of doing it. And that would be another type of program that we use the workplace to become a more protective environment to create, to be safer and healthier for those who work in there. And they, of course, have implications for people beyond the workplace, but it's another important resource. So the workplace is a really great resource. So I really highly recommend that you look at this as it's a resource center that has many different options if you're thinking about trying to facilitate actions within workplaces in your community. And then there's addressing community level risks through environmental approaches. And the CDC talked about alcohol related policies. And I also want to add in different community mobilization strategies, and that there's ways that we can look at sort of alcohol environments and also look at ways to be able to create community efforts to create strong communities to be able to prevent sexual and domestic violence. And so I'll be talking about those programs here now. So alcohol related. Now we all know that alcohol is that so many people, that so much violence is associated with alcohol. We don't see the alcohol as the cause of the violence, but we see it that it's associated with it. And so we want to think about ways that we can look at, and there's been some evidence that's looking at how we can address the issue of alcohol to move forward. And so I gave 3 different examples in here. And I, of course, I found my sheet of paper that had this. So on the left is this is a web conference that we put together called Addressing Access to Alcohol and Alcohol Environments for Sexual and Domestic Violence Prevention. And in it, it's a really great session to really think about some of the different approaches. One of them is looking at alcohol outlet density. And what we have seen is there's been research showing that if you have lower alcohol outlet density, how many liquor stores are there around, basically. And they actually do a mapping process where you map how much alcohol outlet is available. And so to be able to do that, and so we would be able to, and so they map that, and if you have less alcohol outlet density, we find lower intimate partner violence rates or domestic violence rates. And so that's a piece to be able to address that work in moving forward to using alcohol policies to be able to move forward. And there's quite a bit in that web conference of different options that are available to you. The second resource we list there is called Cheers to Creating Protective Environments, Sexual and Intimate Partner Violence Prevention in Bars and Alcohol Serving Establishments. And I'm going to talk about this in just a couple minutes because I think that there's really some great strategies that have been done here in California, and also I think North Carolina we highlight in the web conference. The final one is a report that was put together by the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, where they explored alcohol policy approaches to prevent sexual violence. And we had a whole web conference on it. So I believe that Ashley put that post in there. But let's go to the second one about the alcohol establishments. Right now, what we see is sort of the place, the environment, and the context within a lot of bars and alcohol serving establishments actually increase the risk for violence. They're poorly lit, they're dense and easy access, they're crowded. There's a lot of lowered inhibitions, and it's often a very highly sexualized place, setting, which encourages heavy alcohol consumption, and those can be associated for increasing risk. But if we can come up with interventions that would then create some shifts in the place, environment, and context, we can actually move towards creating protective environments. So how do we modify the physical environment? And how do you be able to, look at the alcohol density, outlet density? You can be able to have staff ready to look out for intoxication and how they can be able to respond to it. And to be able to think about how people socialize or change some of the norms around how people do alcohol to create those environments to become more protective environments. And so that's a place to be able to do that. Alcohol, that whole session web conference talks about creating protective environments in alcohol serving institutions, and does highlight some work done in North Carolina and also in Sacramento, California. In fact, I didn't check. The next strategy I want to talk about is community mobilization strategy. And the California Department of Public Health has been providing support for the Close to Home project. I saw that Nancy Bagnotto from the Closely Department of Public Health is on here and is on today's session, and she was very instrumental in helping bring the Close to Home, having this testing. And there's been many programs in California that have been implementing Close to Home, and there's actually the CDC awarded the University of California at San Diego research dollars to be able to investigate and look at creating stronger, to be able to do research about this program. So that's really an exciting effort. And there's many, and I can't summarize this all here. There's a fabulous report that was put together by the California Department for Public Health. Ashley did post that in there. Community close to home is a strategy that was first developed in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and has been adapted and, as I say, is implemented in communities throughout California right now. It involves community mapping processes, network building. There's youth, adult, and intergenerational leadership, and it's really building community support for built environmental changes. And in the strategy, there's 4 different steps that they engage in. The assess, which is all done by community members who get trained to be able to do this within their own community, where they create an assessment, assess what's going on, they talk with community members, they build different types of actions, build networks and support, and then they act and then move towards preventing sexual or domestic violence. And so it's a really exciting program, and another one of creating a protective environment on a community level. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity for people to be able to explore as a possibility of being able to do this work. And I think really creates incredible opportunities for being able to move forward. So I encourage people to look at that as one of our potential programs. Another strategy was modify the physical and social environments of neighborhoods. And how do we change neighborhoods? And so this is a web conference here that talks about a program in Salinas, California, and also in 3 communities in Michigan that are using greening projects. And there's been research that's shown that when you have greener communities, better park space, it actually contributes to lower domestic violence rates. And that sort of makes sense, but it might not be intuitive. So I'm just going to read something from the Michigan group that talked about what they did. The connection between green spaces and safe relationships is not obvious to everyone. However, one study in public housing shows a link. Residents living in buildings close to green conditions like grass and trees reported lower rates of partner violence in the past year compared to residents living near bare conditions. The study unpacks this link and explains levels of mental fatigue were much higher in barren areas, which may contribute to aggression. Additional research shows connections between green spaces and something that's called collective efficacy, which is sort of mutual trust and willingness to help each other, as well as green spaces and reductions in community violence. And that we know that collective efficacy and community violence are both, the lack of collective efficacy and the community violence are both risk factors for domestic violence. And so what this project does is by improving the conditions within communities through greening can increase community connection and social cohesion. They are going to promote these factors. They're going to help protect and create an environment that's going to prevent sexual and or intimate partner or domestic violence. And so what we're trying to do is greening efforts alone can't, obviously prevent all domestic violence and sexual violence. Greening efforts can influence a range of factors that support safe relationships and have an important positive impact on communities. And so I think that this is another strategy that is really promising and in the CDC has highlighted and is something that can be funded for this project. And so these are just some of these examples of different strategies that people can be able to do from the around protective environments. So I know I've given a lot. I saw there was one question that was more around the workplace piece that came up, and does CalUS SD fund sexual violence workplace training that is required of all staff? They did not specify about that in the RFP, so I don't know if Krista or anyone else can say anything else about that. They didn't specify anything about that. We do know that doing a workplace prevention program that would go beyond, that probably would go beyond just the one piece, beyond just that short mandated training could be something that goes on. Bambi, hello. Hi, Bambi, good to see you. Yes, this presentation can absolutely be shared. We will have a recording of this available by next week, and all the slides are available now. We'll go ahead and post those links right now see, Ashley was way on top of it. So we will have all those slides available. They're available now, and we will have a recording. We do want you to encourage you to share this and any other resources with anyone, any of your colleagues and friends that you have. So wonderful. So there was one other set of tools that I'm not going to go into depth, but just these are two great resources we'll be going over here. And there's a report from Prevention Institute, which is health equity and multi-sector approach to preventing domestic violence. And they also did with the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence a framework for looking at the community conditions, determinants of intimate partner violence, and that just gives more neighborhood pieces that people can move forward. I saw a question that was, there was asking, and that moves us into sort of, well, I'll get to the question. There was one question around the social ecological model. Does the proposal address multiple, so in the RFP, it mentions the social ecological model. Does a proposal approach multiple levels of the SEM? SEM is the social ecological model. There are, we did not put a slide on this here. You can get that in many of the other pieces. I would recommend that that a good prevention program affects multiple levels of the social ecological model. The individual level, would you affect individuals? The relationship level, where you get those who have relationships to have impact on people, such as teachers, coaches, parents, peer leaders. Ones that have the community level, that are being able to address community organizations and entities, and also on the societal level, that's going to look at policies, media images, and being able to do that. There was a question, the RFP didn't specifically ask for evaluation approaches or details. No, they have not. This is an implementation grant, not an evaluation grant. I do encourage everyone who does an prevention program to evaluate that, as that's a way that you can both improve your program, and it's important to be able to tell a story about how your program has made impact. I'm sure Krista will now say, I need evaluation data, so it will help me as an advocate to be able to advocate for more funding in the future. Did I get that right, Krista?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I will tell you all, in trying to convince policymakers to fund prevention, I think we've done a lot of good work to shift the understanding that domestic and sexual violence are indeed preventable, and that there are strategies and approaches that truly can prevent violence. And now that they've bought into that and provided funding, the question I get every day is, so how do we know it's working? What is the impact? And how do we tell that story? So it's not listed within the RFP, but I love the evaluation pieces. And David, as you're going through and answering questions, just wanted to make sure you saw one from Christina in chat asking, so would a community mapping and environmental scan of a high alcohol density location with recommendations to City Council be effective for a strategy to creating protected environments?
That is consistent. So thank you, Christina. Thank you for catching that one. That would be consistent with the approaches that have been defined in this RFP. So yes, that would be a type of part of the strategy of being able to create a protective environment. And I see we have a question here, and Nancy adds that the training and technical assistance providers also can support grantees with their evaluation funding as they're there. And I know Nancy and Miranda were the hands-on in the past round, were the hands-on TA providers in supporting grantees. So our intention is to be able to do that. Before we go further, I just want to get a couple resources, and then Rocco, I see your hand raised. I'm going to get to you shortly, but I want to just cover some of these other resources. So Miranda, why don't I hand it over to you?
Absolutely. I know that folks may have heard of our prevention communities of practice. You may not have. So I want to encourage folks, this is a free opportunity for not just preventionists, but anyone who is working in prevention or wants to learn more, especially with our prevention with the LGBTQIA+ communities. We've been doing a lot of work around gender inclusivity and how folks are able to navigate adapting their curricula and also being able to talk about the challenges when you are doing programming for queer and trans communities and making sure that that is inclusive. So that is held on the first Thursday of every month from 9 to 10:30. Those links are in the chat. Thank you so much, Ashley. If once you register, you are registered for life until you tell us otherwise. So we will continuously send you updates and so on. We will not totally inundate your email. We will be mindful, but this isn't a learning environment where we have folks together to be able to really look at what the strategies and challenges are, and also be able to address some of the pushback that we may get as we're moving towards more inclusive programming. We also have our Creating Safer Schools environments community of practice. It started in shifting boundaries, and we realized that we needed to broaden the scope of that conversation, as many folks are working in schools and really doing a lot of phenomenal work around how we're engaging and interacting with our schools and administrators, looking at school policies. So all of these elements are part of our Creating Safer School Environments, which is held on the third Friday of every month from 12:30 to 1:30. And we do run these communities of practice in collaboration with our partners at Valor US, and we absolutely are working on bringing back the prevention in Spanish. We absolutely want to get that started again, as well as some other communities of practice, including focusing around paid family leave as a means to prevention of intimate partner violence, as well as looking at a community of practice for preventionists of color who are working in their communities and the challenges that they're facing. So know that we will have more coming very soon. These are our two that are active right now, and I do hope that folks will join us, as well as sharing this with your networks. It is not specific to members, or it is completely open to non-members, and you do not have to be a domestic violence or dual programmer in RCC to be able to participate in these. So we hope to see more folks coming in and joining us.
Thank you, Miranda. And this is something that Valor co-facilitates with the partnership. Ashley, why don't you talk about another training opportunity coming up?
Thanks, David. Yeah, I want to invite you all at the end of this month on the 31st. Prevent Connect will be hosting our kind of prevention basics or prevention foundation web conference. And this web conference is really great for folks who are maybe newer to primary prevention or need a refresher. Our goal is to talk about prevention using plain language, not use a lot of jargon, not use a bunch of acronyms, but really just break it down in a way that you know, you could share it with your neighbor and have them understand prevention. So the web conference is Building a Foundation for Sexual and Intimate Partner Violence Prevention. You can register now. And if you are not able to attend, we will record it and then make that available on our website as well. But we'd love to have y'all there.
Great. I'm putting that link in as we speak because someone requested it, and I got it in. Great. And I know that's late for this proposal, but there is recordings of last year's if you want to have that available. So I want to be able to have that be there for you all. So now questions time. I did see there, I saw that there was a question that we have not gotten to yet from Rocco, but Rocco, you raised your hand. So if you want to unmute yourself, I believe you can do that. Or I have to ask you to unmute. So did that work?
Yes,
there.
Can you see me?
I can hear you. We can't see you, but yeah, now we can see you.
Right. I appeared. I'll bring my hand down. First of all, thank you so much for this webinar. I had no idea that we were going to get so much information. And I actually wanted to lean on you all for help in some way. I know you can't speak on behalf of Cal OES or the RFP. However, I'm starting to feel like, wow, we do like 8 out of 10 of these things at Girls Inc. of Alameda County. So without getting too unwieldy about it, I'm just trying to think, should we prioritize? We do bystander, we do girls empowerment, we do some family workshops, but in large part, we do safe teen dating and violence prevention. We also do sexual health education. So again, we have so many seemingly eligible aspects to the strategy and the approaches table. Do you have a sense of, either prioritizing or collapsing or choosing, a very focused area in this regard?
So we can't speak to how CalAS will do this. What I can say is you want to write something that's the best proposal that's going to meet the RFP. So it's really looking at how they're going to be putting this together. The intention behind the funding was to be able to help support strong prevention efforts. And one thing I often caution people against is trying to cover everything in what they're trying to do. It's better to pick what you are going to do and do it well than try to do a lot of things than you don't. While it's $300,000 sounds like a lot of money, it's 2 years, and suddenly it ends up not being a whole lot of money for it, as you hire staff with that. So you want to be able to have the appropriate focus in what you're doing. So, but the key is to write what you think is going to be the best proposal that's going to fit with the capacity of your organization and meet the needs of your community. What is wonderful about the way this RFP is that they want to have organizations identify underserved communities and make sure that they're addressing the needs of underserved communities. And that's something that we at Valor, and I'm sure on the partnership, we really wholeheartedly support CalAS taking that direction. So, as I say, we're not the ones that are doing the scoring. We're not the ones that will be able to do that, but we're trying to really create a great opportunity for people. And I think for everyone, not just for your organization, is to really think about and how to be able to support your developing the best proposals possible. And if you have questions about technical prevention pieces on these strategies, I'll go ahead of slide. Miranda and I can be available to be contacted, and we'd be happy to talk about the strategies. We can't tell you how to write a proposal. We're not going to review your proposals, but we can talk about those strategies, and that we would be available to help support people in being able to do that.
Yeah, if I can just underscore a little of what David said, I think we often all have the tendency to want to do all of it because it's all so important. But there's no expectation with this RFP that anyone will cover all of the strategies and approaches that are listed. And, I think generally when writing grants, right, so not speaking just to this one, what's so important is to be able to tell the story of what you're going to do and why it's going to be amazing and a great use of the funders' dollars. So I know you all have those stories and those strengths to speak to.
Thank you.
Great. If you have any other questions, go ahead and either you can raise your hand or put it into the chat. We have a few more minutes available for questions. It's great to see many of you I've had a chance to know, and some of you we get a chance to meet here, and just want to be able to see help being able to support that. And Ashley's just throwing in, whenever in doubt, we're throwing in more resources. No one's going to complain that we didn't give you enough resources. We might have given you too many, but we really wanted to highlight examples of what it's doing. We did use a little bit of technical language because we're using the language of the RFP. And so we wanted to make sure, and that's one, so we're using the language that is in the RFP. What Ashley's doing is trying to promote something that's gonna be a little broader, and but that's how we're doing this here. Oh, well, thank you, Bambi. And I appreciate that coming from you. So great. So any other questions, please? We have a couple minutes left for that. We want to be able to be a resource for all of you.
As folks are posting their questions, I just wanted to highlight something that I had been remiss. I did not have it in the slides, is our Building Change Together primary prevention core competencies training will be available twice in 2022, and we will be holding that virtually. It is a 3-day skill-based training for both first-time participants. So if you're just wanting to learn about prevention and those core competencies, you can absolutely join us. If you've attended before, we have opportunities for a deeper dive. I have posted the link, and if folks have questions, then absolutely reach out, and know that we will be posting those dates very soon.
And that will be designed for people who get awarded the SD grant to be able to participate, but it's beyond that who can.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lola, for the night, and Mark, and Yolanda and Gio for the nice comments. Will be chance for, so as I say, if you have further questions, feel free to contact myself or Miranda. We are happy. And what we will not be able to answer questions about the RFP, but we can answer questions about the prevention strategies and highlight resources. A mental health organization that wants to focus more on the SD prevention, but don't have anyone on staff with 1-year experience doing that specifically. We want to hire someone once we know our grant status. Can we wait to hire? I believe they do want to have that experience. I believe that was something that they listed in there, that they wanted to have that experience available. So you might want to look at potential partnerships that you could have with other people where you could be able to get that expertise if you don't have that on your own staff. But they are looking for that. That was described in the RFP. But once again, I am not speaking for Cal OES. So you love the caveats that I have to throw out there. Any other questions? We have a few minutes left. We're happy to end early for anyone who wants to be able to get 6 minutes left of their extra in their day, which is always appreciated. And wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Krista, Miranda, and Ashley for joining. I want to thank Julie for all of the back end pieces. We will have a recording. Is IPV adults only?
Yes.
For purposes of these, our understanding is that it would include teen dating violence and adult. So that it is not that specific for the purposes of this, and that prevention is very appropriate with young people. Okay, and wonderful. I'm seeing, thank you for all those comments, everyone, and thank you so much. And thanks to, as I say, for all of the presenters today, and thank you for all of you who are participating, and good luck. I'm really interested, if just let us know, are you planning on applying for this grant? Go ahead and write yes or no in the, I'd just like to get a sense. I'm seeing someone wrote yes, yes, yes. Heck yes. Okay.
These are the answers we like to see. This is exciting.
Claro, great. Okay. I'm in Oakland, so we would have said, never mind. Okay, I won't use that. So we will thank you all for, great. So we want to be able to that was the intention of this, is to help support people and being able to have good background information to be able to develop strong proposals. And our goal is to eventually advocate for more money so more people can get funded, and for longer terms, because this can't be done in a short term. It's a long-term piece. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yes, Virginia, I know what they say in Oakland, but coming from a white man my age, it sounds really silly. So, so yes, thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.